Ladies and gentlemen, fellas, welcome back to the channel, and today we're talking about the 3 worst picks in fantasy football drafts. And you either just drafted, and this might break your heart, or a big sigh of relief that you avoided these 3 players, or ideally and hopefully, you'll just scratch these guys off your draft tiers, off the tiers that I have linked down below. You can check them out. So let's get into it. They just all happen to be wide receivers. And we're in the thick of things right now. I mean, I've got a draft as I record this tonight. I've got my home league draft tomorrow. The big one, the heavy hitter for like the 7th or 8th year. I think it's 8th year at this point. These guys are off my board. I'm literally taking them off before I even go in. I'm not going to see them when I'm going through to pick players, the draft. So we can start with the first player here. And like this video if you have a moment of your time. And let me know in the comment section who is somebody that you are not drafting. You are not drafting this year. This first player is Michael Thomas. And Michael Thomas, the obvious, right? This was a guy who I had ranked as my number 7 wide receiver before the fact that he did not get surgery when he should have gotten surgery, and now he's going to miss, it seems like, at least 6 weeks of the year. Now, there's no 100% confirmation on that, but it does seem like, if you read between the lines here, that this is a 4-month recovery when he had the surgery in the middle of June. 4 months takes you out middle to end of June. Takes you out to middle of end of October. Middle of end of October takes you out to about 6 weeks of the NFL season, just until he can get back on the field, let alone getting back up into game speed, playing with Jameis if he's still the quarterback then for the first time ever, and getting that connection going, as other guys have now built it in camp, like Marquise Callaway in the preseason and the beginning of the season. So you're automatically scraping 6 weeks, and there's reports that he's probably not going to be fully healthy for 8 to 10 weeks. So 2 months, we'll call it, without this guy that you're drafting in this 6th round. He currently has an ADP of wide receiver 27. He's my wide receiver 72. Yes, that is a very far gap, and that might seem extreme, but that just means that I'm not drafting him unless he's there in the 13th round of 12-team drafts or the 15th round of 10-team drafts. And I got a spoiler alert for you. He's never there. And now I've seen the decent take that why can't you just draft him and put him on IR? Well, that solves one issue, right? One issue of drafting him, because there's 2. The first one is you have to draft him in the 6th round when there's guys like T. Higgins and Jerry Jeudy and Robbie Anderson and Chase Claypool. And should I continue to go through the fantastic wide receivers, let alone all the elite quarterbacks that go in that range of Dak Prescott's and Josh Allen's and Kyler Murray's? I'd rather just not have that opportunity cost and have one of those guys instead who will be there if they avoid injury for the first 6 weeks of the season, right? And then you have the second issue, which the IR spot does help. The second issue is, well, if you have him on your bench, it does not allow you to roster another player. So week 1 happens, and a guy that you were watching but you couldn't draft because there wasn't enough bench spots, he goes off. And it's like, do I want to drop Michael Thomas? I'm not going to drop Michael. He's going to come back. I wasted a 6th-round pick on him. And I say wasted, not lightly. So the IR spot would at least solve that, but it doesn't solve the fact that you still have to waste a 6th-round pick on a guy who I have right now valued as a 13th-round pick, because you're not going to get 6 weeks of production back. He's wide receiver 27 off the board right now. He's not going to finish wide receiver 27. There's just no way when you miss 1 to 2 months of the year. And then there's also the underrated storyline here of the fact that he has a feud with the team. I mean, this guy literally posted on his social media that they're like scapegoating him, right? They're making him the black sheep. They're kind of throwing this on him in the media right now, that he didn't want to go and get the surgery when he was supposed to. And then he ghosted the team for 3 months, didn't answer Sean Payton's messages, didn't answer the GM or the medical staff's messages. And then he comes back and says, yeah, I'm not healed. I'm not feeling too good. I'm going to go get the surgery now. And Sean Payton did not look too happy when asked about that multiple times during camp. And the GM said that, yeah, I mean, we're irate right now. This is potentially the best player on this team, right there with Alvin Kamara as the best players on our team, and he's not acting like a leader. And, you know, you have all the past incidents with Mr. Michael Thomas there, requesting a trade already once within the past year from this team. So that's the underrated storyline of the disgruntled. There's always a potential chance that he gets traded, and maybe you see that as a positive, but I wouldn't see that as a positive. But the bigger issue is just the fact that you have no idea. You have no idea once he even comes back what his health is going to be. You're lucky. You're lucky if in 6 to 8 weeks from now that he's 100%. That's your best case scenario, right? And that's if he just has a miraculous recovery, that he's definitely taking it seriously. And we haven't really seen any track record the last 6 months of him seriously trying to get on the field based on the fact that he already delayed this. So Michael Thomas, they do not draft, do not touch him. He is one of the worst 3 picks in fantasy right now. As we get into the second wide receiver here, I want to let you know about the Fantasy Football 2021 Supreme Draft Kit. It is linked down below. Limited time to get it for free if you're eligible. Just follow that link. It'll show you everything you need to do. 90 running backs, 125 receivers, 50 tight ends, and 50 quarterbacks are all ranked top 200 tiers, updated daily for any news that comes out, player profiles, key stats database, a bunch of stuff. Basically, you're going to have all the information you need, no matter how deep and how many rounds your draft is, how big, how small. You're going to smack around your league mates and smack around the competition. Check it out, link down below. And now the second receiver here, and this is a guy that I think is the worst pick in fantasy football, believe it or not, and a little bit worse than Michael Thomas. They're all pretty close here. He goes as the wide receiver 34, was recently going as the wide receiver 27 before an injury he suffered in camp. I think he had like a broken thumb that he had to get fixed. Now it's DJ Chark for the Jacksonville Jaguars. He currently, as we record this, is going off the board as the first Jacksonville Jaguars wide receiver off the board, when I would tell you that he's the wide receiver 3 on this team. I have Marvin Jones well ahead of him in rankings and Laviska Shenault, both guys who have had connection with Mr. Trevor Lawrence in the preseason. Marvin Jones a lot, then he gets the AC joint sprain, but he's expected to be ready week 1. He's not going to come off the field at all. He's going to be the X on the outside. And then you have Laviska Shenault, who was the only starting receiver in the third preseason game, ends up getting the touchdown and having a nice day out there and a couple of drives with Lawrence, but these guys are building momentum in camp right now, where DJ Chark, he's just not. He hasn't been there. He's doing limited drills as he's coming back from this thumb injury. And also DJ Chark, I hate to break it to you, not that good of a player relative to other NFL players, right? Let's get that out there. He's way better than me, but relative to other NFL players at the wide receiver position. Why are you drafting him is my question. No, seriously, let's start to think about this when you start to question me that I'm wrong on DJ Chark. Why do you want to draft DJ Chark? Is it because of what he did in 2019? In 2019, when he was the only receiver on Jacksonville and he barely broke 1,000 yards in his breakout year, 1,008 yards, which is not even that impressive of a metric as 25 receivers had 1,000 yards last year. Yes, 25 receivers. So he barely breaks 1,000 yards, right? And he did that while being the 42nd most efficient receiver. So wasn't even a top 32, not like one of the best on his team, efficiency wide receiver in the NFL that year. So what does that mean? If he wasn't being efficient, if he wasn't getting yards after contact and getting open on his own right, well, how was he producing? Well, he was producing on overall volume, right? That's how he got there. He was just getting a ton of targets because there was nobody else in that offense. Even last year, he was outside the top 70 last year in overall efficiency. And what happened last year? Well, the volume came down and you saw him outside the top 40 wide receivers. Of course, the quarterback play was not good. And I know that there's a massive upgrade now with Trevor Lawrence from Gardner Minshew. But that still doesn't solve the problem that he has not been an efficient receiver on his own right. That's individual. That's independent of the quarterback that you're playing with, that efficiency, the yards after contact and getting the separation. And now with Marvin Jones in there and Laviska Shenault heading into a second year where he can take a step forward as he's going to be fully healthy with an actual camp and OTAs in preseason when he did not have that his rookie year. When these two guys are coming into the picture now, it's going to get really difficult for a guy who barely was able to get there last year before Marvin Jones and now a second-year Laviska Shenault. So I agree. If DJ Chark was set to see 130 targets like he had his 117 target 2019 season, I'd say this looks really good. But I think DJ Chark is going to finish, if he's lucky, second on this team in targets and more likely third. Stay far away from DJ Chark. Just don't draft players. I mean, all these guys have one thing in common. They're dealing with injuries in camp. Just don't draft players that are automatically going to be injured, like to start the year. Why would you do that? You know that you're going to have some injuries during the year. Don't do it. As we get into the third wide receiver, I want to let you know about the sponsor of the program. It is brought to you by the lovely shirt that we're wearing, if you can see it right here, Manscaped. And Manscaped, let me tell you, I mean, look at this ad read right now. It's time to put the PP back in PPR with the sponsors of today's show, Manscaped. The leaders in below the waist grooming just launched a new Performance Package 4.0. I just got it. It's in there. It's got a ton of stuff. I mean, it's got the ball deodorant, the ball toner. It's got the lawnmower 4.0, right? It's got the weed whacker, a nice old nose trimmer up in there. And as a Packers fan, this one cannot be more true and funny. Don't neglect your balls like the Packers front office has been neglecting Aaron Rodgers. Join the 2 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped and get ready for kickoff by getting to manscaped.com for 20% off free shipping with the code SAL. This will help you tame the Troy Polamalu in your pants. That is manscaped.com, 20% off. Use the code SAL, S-A-L. Hey, I got a whole package of Manscaped in there. I'd urge you fellas, and the 1% of ladies, if you want to get it for your man fellas, hey, check it out down below. It's a ton of fun. It comes awesome. So much stuff in there. It's well worth it. I'm already gifting it to some friends. Check it out down below. Welcome back from that lovely advertisement. The third wide receiver that we're going to talk about today. Another guy who was banged up, who hasn't seen any time during preseason and barely any time during camp. Baltimore Ravens, Marquise Brown. Now, Marquise Brown, bad pick his rookie year, right? I mean, literally in the draft, like first wide receiver off the board in the late 20s and a bad wide receiver class. He's an undersized burner on the outside. Since when does that pay off for you as a wide receiver one? Ask Henry Ruggs last year. That's why he's added 20 pounds this year. Ask John Ross when he was drafted. Ask Tavon Austin all the way back in the day. Dante Pettis. I mean, the list keeps going on and on for these small, undersized receivers. They might have a flash in the pan couple of weeks here and there, but for the most part, they're not going to consistently beat cornerbacks that have 20 to 30 pounds on them. It just doesn't happen. And I think similar things are happening with Hollywood Brown. And he was also put in an offense that's not pass first by any means, the NFL's leading rushing offense, but that expects to be the case this year again, even if there's no Dobbins, because Gus Edwards steps right in. And they have Tyshawn Williams, who's been looking fantastic, a top 5 efficiency running back in the preseason overall. They have Justice Hill. They still have, Mr. Lamar Jackson. So they're going to run the ball a lot. But there's a couple things here. I mean, he's had a hamstring injury. For the one thing, right? The one trick pony in terms of his speed and burner, and that's his big secret and his big trick. Now you're going to take one of those legs off that pony in Hollywood Brown, who's dealing with a major hamstring injury, who, as of yesterday, they're saying is still potentially weeks away. Still potentially weeks away. So you might be saying, well, yeah, who the hell would draft this guy? Well, he currently goes off the board as wide receiver 44. I don't know if it's because his name. I don't know if it's because he's had a couple of nice games, and I think this is the main reason. He's had 2 multi-touchdown games on Sunday Night Football and in prime time. He had the big game last year, and what was potentially the game of the year against the Browns for the Ravens. He had the big touchdown late after having a drop early. So we see this name. We see it in prime time a lot, right? It's attached with Lamar Jackson as his number 1 receiver. MVP year 2 years ago with him. So I think that's why we're hyping him up a little bit. But he's now at best the 3rd and probably 4th best pass catcher on his team. Gasp, did Sal just say that? Yeah, I mean, this is a one-trick pony wide receiver on the outside. Mark Andrews is a better weapon in this offense. Rashad Bateman, when he gets healthy, which at this point seems to be potentially before Hollywood Brown, even though he goes after him in drafts. Bateman expected to be back in September. And then, yeah, they brought in Sammy Watkins, which might sound like a joke to you, but don't think Sammy Watkins is a bad receiver by any means. He's also dealing with injury and can't believe it or not, all these receivers, but he had a specific role in Kansas City. His role and his routes were to be the underneath man. And how often did they throw underneath? Not often. They would throw deep, majority of the time, to Travis Kelce into the intermediate, or on those big hook routes by Tyreek Hill in the middle to the field. Start on the left side, go to the right side, right? Sammy Watkins was the clear out guy underneath for not only linebackers, but in the middle of the field for safeties as well for those other 2 guys. Sammy Watkins is still a solid wide receiver. And if you think that I'm crazy for saying that he's potentially better than Hollywood Brown, that's fine. But I would just say, where's the Hollywood Brown breakout season that you're going to point to? So the Ravens offense upgraded Willie Snead into Sammy Watkins, major upgrade. They upgrade Miles Boykin, who could barely get separation, basically a tight end on the outside for them last year. They upgrade him into Rashad Bateman, potentially the best wide receiver in this past year's draft. So you have those 2 upgrades. So the 25% target share that Marquise Brown was seeing last year, I just don't know where that's coming from. I think a really realistic target share for him when he plays this year, and that's a big if and when, right? I assume at some point, 18% target share. I mean, if you're going to drop 7% in target share in a year, it's really difficult to finish an 18% target share in a run-first offense as a top 40, top 45 wide receiver where he's going right now, unless you have this breakout touchdown season, which I'm not seeing so much right now with Mark Andrews and a bunch of running backs and Rashad Bateman on your team. So he goes as the wide receiver 44. He's outside my top 60 wide receivers, Marquise Hollywood Brown. Just stay away from him. So there's 3 guys. Hey, 3 schmacks right there. There you go. 3 of the worst picks right now in fantasy football. I think they are the 3 worst. They just happen to be receivers. You know, a lot of people already know running back. It's pretty efficient. And when you're taking these like 3rd and 4th string running backs, you're spending really late picks on them at that point. They're all pretty similar. It's not like they can burn you that much. Your expectations for them are not to actually be in your starting lineup. Whereas Hollywood Brown, whereas Michael Thomas, I mean, you're taking these guys in round 6 through 8. Your expectation is for them to be in your starting lineup at least as a flex at some point pretty damn soon, if not every week. And these guys should not be there or anywhere near there. Just take them off your draft boards. So thank you for tuning in. I'd like to let you know we do have a Fantasy Football 2021 draft guide linked down below. So take a second of your time and check that out. My top 200, I personally draft off my tiers, 90 running backs, 125 receivers, 50 quarterbacks and 50 tight ends. Yes, 50 quarterbacks and 50 tight ends, all ranked out, updated daily for any news that is coming out for the cuts that are happening right now during cut season. You can check that all out down below for a limited time offer to get it for free. Before you go, hit the like button and check out the Fantasy Football 2021 playlist with a bunch of videos dropping every day and a bunch of dropped over the past weeks and months to help you dominate your draft. The more information you have, the easier it is to smack around your league mates and win the draft. Winning the draft is not everything, but it is a big piece of the puzzle. Staying up to date with waivers and trades and things like that is after that. But if you win the draft and set yourself up for success early, massive. It's just downhill sledding after that. So thank you for tuning in, ladies and gentlemen, and the fellas, yo. The next videos are going to be some tiers, the final tiers, that is. We already have some videos out on running backs and receivers. Can't wait. See you then. Peace out, gang.